Good evening. Welcome to Lessons of Vietnam. My name is Bill Dixon. I have a special guest with me tonight. If you were tuned in last show, Dick Ellis was with us, and tonight we're going to go and visit with Dick again, and he is going to be showing us some pictures that he took of some of the celebrities he took when he was two shows you had, Dick, on there at the American Forces Vietnam in Saigon.
Actually, I had 4 or 5 different things. We did a Vietnamese, Let's Speak Vietnamese. I had a show like the Johnny Carson show called In Town Tonight, and all kinds of different little shows like it. We had a good time.
General military, whatever needed to be done, you step forward and had to do.
Yeah,
so we're going to be talking about that tonight and giving a shout out to some of the people. And I'm going to go ahead and get started, Dick, and I'm going to let you get started and do your pictures the way you want to and make whatever comments you want to make. By the way, if you want to call in and talk to Dick, call us at 919-518-9773, or even better, go on to Skype and use the address computers 2K, that's K as in kilo, voice. Computers 2K voice, and type in your answer, your questions or whatever. Go ahead and log in with your name. If you don't want to use your name, just make up a name you like, but we'd like to know who we're talking to so we can call you by name. But come on and join us and ask Dick questions and so forth, and tell him some stories and tell him whether you liked it. If you saw him on TV in Vietnam, whether you liked him or not. And if you don't like him, that's okay too. Tell him that too, because we all need to know so he can do better next time when he goes back over to gets on the air. And all right, Dick, go ahead and you start the show. And you can tell him what you want to, and tell him some more about what you did over there. And,
Good. All right. Well, what I'd like to say is I had the privilege of being on television here in North Carolina. I worked in radio in my hometown in Wilson, WGTM radio. And then I had the chance to go to Channel 7, WITN in Washington. And I was a weatherman down there and whatever. And then I got drafted. And so when I got drafted, they sent me to the Public Information Office at Fort Bragg. And then
Dick, let me interrupt you just a second. Right. Now, he said he was on Channel 7 in Washington. For those of you who don't know, that's original Washington in North Carolina.
Right, Washington, North Carolina. We call it Little Washington here, Beaufort County. And so when I went in the Army, they put me on television, and I went to the American Forces Vietnam Network. I replaced a guy named John Steinbeck Jr., and we got a photo coming up of him in a few moments. And then when I left in 1968, I was replaced by a kid named Pat Sajak. And my mom said success comes every other generation, so I guess that was true. But I had a wonderful, wonderful opportunity while I was in Vietnam to be on television to help keep information flowing to our men and women in uniform, and also take a lot of pictures and interview. I had a show like the Johnny Carson show called In Town Tonight, and whenever a movie star would come over, they'd let me interview them, and it was just a great privilege. Just a country boy from North Carolina getting us to talk and meet and see all of these celebrities. So you want to look at the pictures?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Good. Let's do it. All right. First of all, I think our first one is, this is the American Forces Vietnam Network, Channel 11, Saigon. There it is. That was our logo, and that's what we put up, radio and television, and we all wore a little badge that showed we were with the American Forces Vietnam Network. And I was a combat correspondent part of the time, and so when I went out in the field, we also wore a badge letting them know who we were. And we were all military guys. We were all in the service, but we had we were correspondents.
Can you believe we were that young?
We were.
Look, and skinny?
Were we that skinny? And was our hair that dark? I'll tell you. But when I first got there, they had thrown up a weather board, and they didn't know anything about producing a local weather show. And they had painted a board army green. They'd stolen some paint from somebody and painted a piece of plywood army green, and then used masking tape. And that was the map that I used when I first got there as a weatherman. So we started working and rebuilt the whole thing. Now, here's one of my favorite TV personalities. This was Bobby. This was Bobby Keith. There were 2 weather girls. If you were there kind of early before 67, you remember Bobby Oberhansky. And unfortunately, she went back to California, where she later passed away at a very early age. And then there was Bobby Keith. Bobby's now She was working with USAID, United, what is it? USAID?
Yeah,
USAID?
USA.
Yeah,
USA.
USAID. And she was a secretary, and she was such a beautiful girl. They said, come over and audition for the Weather Girl. And so I was in charge of producing and putting together the weather show, and also teaching Bobby how to do the weather. She is retired now, lives down in Florida, and Bobby Keith does a lot of fantastic work with our men and women down there, our veterans. And so we started, as you saw, with a piece of plywood painted green, and this is what we turned it into. By the way, the United States Marine Corps, the last service, the only service to have artists, combat artists, and we had two of them assigned to our TV station, and they did this, built this set, this beautiful weather set. You see on the left, it's Vietnam. In the middle were all the R&R places, and back home we also give the temperatures around the United States.
Well, Dick, the weather in Vietnam should have been easy to report. It was either hot or wet, or hot and dry.
Or hot and dry all the time. You're exactly right. We didn't change the weather board much. And here's a picture of Bobby, and when you go on R&R, and I got to put on my glasses to read these things, Bill, and they were Kuala Lumpur and Penang and Philippines and Manila and all in Honolulu and all the different places you could go on R&R. And I never got one. I went out with a Green Beret team and filmed a documentary on my R&R. Now, occasionally we take a break on the weekends. We were off Sunday. We worked 12 hours a day from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, 6 days a week. And Sunday we were off. And occasionally we'd have a barbecue in the backyard. And here's how you have a wartime Saigon barbecue. And I'm sure there's some folks watching us that were in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan did the same thing. Get an old oil drum, cut it in half, make yourself a barbecue grill, especially if you're a Southern boy. You know how that works. And cook something. Now, let me tell a secret here. We always, first thing we did was make friends with the mess sergeant, because they had cases of chickens and turkeys and steaks and things like that. And every mess hall in Vietnam was a tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder. They played music, if you remember, an old Ampex tape recorder usually. And so what we would do is we would make reels of music that would last an hour, hour and a half long, especially country music. And we would trade them with the cooks all over for cases of steaks and cases of chicken. That's how we got our stuff for backyard barbecues.
Yeah. Through the back channels, you could get just about anything you wanted if you knew the right people.
If you knew the right guy, you're exactly right. Now, this is a gentleman that I replaced, and his father was there. Actually, John Steinbeck, the senior, was there and stayed almost a month in Vietnam, and it was right before I got there. But I replaced John, and he was on television, did a lot of production and stuff like that. He knew all about that kind of thing. And this is John Steinbeck Jr. And unfortunately, John died in his late 30s, early 40s. He had simple back surgery and died on the operating table. And so he's not with us anymore. But later I met his brother, Tom Steinbeck, who lives in California. And Tom came over and worked with Pat Sajak and everybody who came over in 68 after I left. Here's our TV station, the American Forces Vietnam Network. We were so proud of it. But if you look in the background, you'll see some windows blown out. One afternoon, we had a taxi, a Vietnamese taxi, pull up on a driveway beside our TV station and had 250 pounds of dynamite in the back seat, and he blew our TV station up. And you can see the front doors are shattered and the windows are shattered. We already had these barrels of concrete out front in case somebody tried to drive a car into the front door. And here's a wonderful shot of our front door right after the bomb blew up. And I was in the studio trying to get the weather set up, weather board, for Bobby Keith to come in and do the weather that afternoon on the 6 o'clock news. And the lighting grid up in the ceiling fell on my head. So I had a bump on my head for another 3 or 4 days. And there's a picture of our front door is our next picture there. And so you can see what a Vietnamese taxi with 250 pounds of dynamite will do. And we'll speed them up just a little bit. There's the front windows. You can't see too much of that. Now, they asked me, they said, we've got all these celebrities coming over on the USO shows, and they've volunteered to come to our TV station in downtown Saigon and to do an interview, and we don't have any way to do it. Could you set up a show sort of like the Johnny Carson show and interview all the movie stars when they come, and after we'll videotape it after they leave, then we'll show it, and then we'll put it on film and send it all over the country. And so everybody they don't get to actually see and meet or put on a show for, they can see it on our TV network. And so one of the first I interviewed was this lovely lady. She's passed away now in a retirement home in Texas. Her name was Ann B. Davis. Ann,
quite a comedian.
Who was she?
Funny. Well, she was Alice in Brady Bunch,
Right.
and then she was with was it Bob Newhart show she was on?
Bob Cummings, I
Bob
believe
Cummings
it
show.
was.
Okay,
She was Schultze in the
Schultze,
Bob
yeah.
Cummings show first, and then Alice on the Brady Bunch, and Ann B. Davis. And not too long ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I sent her a picture of us, this picture right here of us being interviewed in Saigon, and said, "Do you remember this?" And she wrote me back and sent me an autograph photo and said, "I remember you so well, Dick, and I enjoyed all of my guys in Vietnam." She was a wonderful lady. Now, here's a character that I had a privilege to interview too. And any idea who this is?
Well, that would be Bob Denver of Gilligan's Island. It was the most famous show he was
Yep,
in.
Gilligan's Island. Bob Denver. He was a native of West Virginia, and Bob, all of his career, smoked marijuana. He and Willie Nelson are famous for smoking pot.
Along with
And-
Robert Mitchum.
Yeah, and Bob Denver was so high the day we did this interview, I don't think he really knew what town he was in, to be honest with you. But he was a nice guy. He was so sweet. And in person, he was just kind of like golly, kind of goofy, like the real Gilligan. So, but he was a nice guy. But he sure enjoyed his marijuana.
If you have not seen these shows you can find these shows like Gilligan Islands on some of the old TV shows. You can go in. You'd really enjoy Gilligan's Island. They went out for a short boat ride and got marooned on an island
Yeah.
with, let's see, it was the movie star. What I can't
A
remember. her-
millionaire and his wife,
and his wife, a movie
a
star.
scientist.
Yeah, a scientist, and there were two good-looking women on there, and it was interesting. And the captain,
I think it was a cross section of society is
Yeah.
what they were trying to create.
but it was really a great show.
A lot of people ask me, you interviewed a lot of movie stars the 14 months you were in Vietnam. Who was your favorite? And of course, I got to say this guy. It was Ben-Hur himself.
Yeah.
Mr. Charlton Heston. And he was one of the nicest guys that you have ever met. And so natural and so down to earth and so gentlemanly and so sweet.
Well,
And-
he was the president of the National Rifle Association
yes, he
for
was.
a long
He's
time.
the guy that held up the rifle and said they'll have to pry this out of my cold
which
dead
which
hand.
I know that really made him a lot of friends in Hollywood.
Yep, he and John Wayne were buddies too. He told me, and my favorite story about him is he came in and sat down. They brought him in, and we were fixing the lights and fixing the microphones. And I said, "Mr. Heston, this, Mr. Heston, we're so excited to have you. Mr. Heston, thank you for coming over here. Mr. Heston, this and that." And so they said, "Okay, stand by, Dick. Go. You're on camera. Go." And I said, "Our special guest tonight is Charlton Heston. Mr. Heston, thanks for being with us." And he looked over at me and said, "Dick, call me Chuck." And I didn't know what to say. But he was a wonderful, wonderful guy.
And a great actor.
Yes.
There's
Now,
some-
also, it wasn't all entertainment. We did have a little show called Insight that we set up, and we would do it sort of spur of the moment. And we did things like with this to remind the guys out there, clean your rifle, get your shots, take your malaria tablets, which will make you sick as a dog,
Yes.
by the way. And they were big as a quarter, and they were orange. And what was it? Not amphetamine. What am I trying to say? What were they? Atropine.
Yeah.
Atropine tablets, I think, or something, whatever it was.
well, those of us who were lucky enough to burn
Yeah.
the barrels,
Yeah.
you could always tell the day after malaria because they kept things moving.
Exactly. But we did a little show called Insight, and we would do things like if you're getting ready to take an R&R or go on vacation or whatever, and get a few days off, be sure to put in your paperwork early, and if you need a dental exam, be sure to make that arrangement as soon as possible. The worst time in Vietnam, everybody said, "What's the worst time?" And of course, the worst time was during the Tet Offensive, when there were so many people killed in Saigon, so many civilians, so many of our guys killed all around Saigon, all over Vietnam for that matter. That was the worst time. But the second worst time was Christmas time.
Yeah, we all miss Christmas.
And we really tried to make so much out of it. And everybody, my mom would send me over cookies and things, and she would pack it in popcorn. That's what she used for insulation.
Yeah.
And we would open the package and eat the stale popcorn. To this day, every time I eat popcorn, I think about in Vietnam, that we would put aside whatever the present was and eat the stale popcorn. It took over 2 weeks for a package to get to Vietnam, as you remember, Bill, by ship. And so the popcorn was 2 weeks old when we got it, but we ate it by the handfuls. It was the most delicious part of home we could get.
Well, I believe some of the movie theater popcorn now is about that
It
old.
probably is. Maybe it was brought back from Vietnam. But this is a picture waiting
Well,
for.
you were waiting for the lady.
I was waiting for the lady, and here she is. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Martha Raye. And she was so nice. She was an old trooper, and I asked her questions about some of the old movie stars, working with Bob Hope and all these sorts of things. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful lady. And by the way, Martha Raye, and I had forgotten this, I had to look it up today. Martha Raye is buried at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
In Special Forces Cemetery.
And yeah, in the main post cemetery is
Yeah.
what it said in the book. And I guess that's Special Forces area too. But she just fell in love with the Green Berets and adopted the Special Forces. And they gave her a uniform, made her an honorary colonel, and wherever she went.
Well, Dick, not only was she a movie star, but she fell in, but she was also a nurse. And quite often she worked in the hospitals as a nurse, helping out the wounded.
Yeah,
so she didn't want just there
really
as a celebrity. She was rolled up her sleeves and got right into the.
But she loved her boys, and man, she would go to the furthest Special Forces camp on top of a hill, anywhere she could. She would go to be with the GIs and say hello and how are you. Our next guy is, you got to be kind of old, I guess, to remember this guy. You might remember his son, Ed Begley Jr., but this is Ed Begley, and he was an old actor. Now, the only thing that I can really remember him in is he was captain of a submarine, and they miniaturized the submarine, and they injected in a guy's bloodstream. What was that movie?
I know the movie, but I don't.
1,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but it was something like. But that was the last big movie I think.
He made a lot of movies. He was the backup actor, the second string actor, but he made a lot of movies.
Ed Begley Sr. and his son now is a tall, skinny, white-haired guy, Ed Begley Jr. Now, we were also using our TV and radio facilities to back up our Vietnamese friends. We were there. Why were we in Vietnam? We were in Vietnam to make sure that the Vietnamese people enjoyed freedom and lived in democracy as we do in this great country. We wanted to share it with them, and that's why we were there. For some reason, and I don't know how, other than the fact that this guy was educated in France. He went through military academy in France. He went to the United States for several military schools. His name was Tran Ngoc Tom, General Tran Ngoc Tom. We called him General Tom, and he was a 3-star general. He was in charge of the liaison with all of the Vietnamese military and the Free World Forces. We called it the Australian, New Zealand, Americans, Canadians, Spanish, whoever else was over there helping us out.
ROC, Philippines.
Yeah, ROC, the Philippines too. I've forgotten all of them. But there were about 24 countries that we never even saw on television, never got any information about on the news. But they were over there helping us out. Some were just medical units, but they were there. But this was General Tom. And for some reason, he adopted me. He liked me and adopted me and went over to his house a couple of times where he lived. And also one weekend, he borrowed General Westmoreland's Learjet. And we went down to Carson Island, which was the penal colony that was built by the French down there. And we went to that island and toured all around. And he was a character.
And if you ever went to his house for a party, did they ever have the monkey brains thing?
No, they didn't. He had a cook that was Indian, and he would make curried duck. And it's the first time I ever ate curried duck was General Tom's Indian cook.
Indian cook.
And also, General Tom was the ambassador to Thailand when Vietnam fell. And he was in Thailand at that time, and he just left Thailand and came straight to the United States. And he opened a catering business down in Florida. And I went down one time. I was in Florida when I worked at the Pentagon, and I was down there on business, and I took an extra day and went and found General Tom and spent the day with him. And also, later, I met General Westmoreland in the 80s, and we played golf together down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, at a Vietnam Veterans fundraiser down in Charleston. And I was telling him, do you remember General Tom, who was the military liaison with all of us? And he says, yes. As a matter of fact, General Tom is the man that told me about the Tet Offensive. And he said, that's the first word I got it was going to happen was from General Tom. And he had been involved in a lot of these coups and things for many years. And he was very pro-American and a good friend to this great country of ours. Now, this young lady, I'm sorry I cannot tell you what her name is. She was an airline stewardess. And what happened was when we went to Vietnam, not all of us flew on military planes. They would charter private airliners and send us over there.
Braniff was one. Who first ones I saw with purple airplanes was Braniff.
Braniff, and some of them were off. They would buy an old airplane and change the name to it, Charter Incorporated or something, and fly us over there with a government contract. And I left Fort Dix, New Jersey, flew to Anchorage, Alaska, Yokota, Japan, and into Long Binh, Vietnam, Bien Hoa and Long Binh and all that area. But she was on a charter airline that were bringing GIs over, and she was engaged to a young lieutenant. And they brought him into the TV station, and they said they were going to have a seminar there and show them, how to meet some of us. And when we were out in the field filming, they would know who we were and all that. And so when he walked in the door, there she was. And they were engaged to get married when he got back home. And here's another shot of her. All the cameramen now, none of these guys were on the air except me next to her. But all of these guys were the cameramen and sound men and lighting directors and everything else. And they all came in, piled in, and wanted their picture taken. And so,
Well, anytime around I was available.
yeah, she was beautiful. It's the first time we'd seen a white woman a round eye. You're right, a white woman in about 6 or 8 months. This is President Nguyen Van Thieu. When I first got there, it was Nguyen Cao Ky, General Key. He was an Air Force pilot, and he dressed in black jumpsuit, and his wife was Madame New. Is that who she was?
Madame New was his was his sister-in-law.
Oh yeah, and so this is Nguyen Cao Ky. Nguyen Van Thieu here. Yeah. He was later.
Key had always had a good-looking young wife.
Well, he had, and I can't remember what they called her. I'm getting old and senile. But this is the president of Vietnam coming, and behind him is Colonel Jones, who was a manager of our TV station, and all the guys piled up, taking pictures of.
Back, you mentioned Madame New. Back when, if you remember some of the pictures, you saw the Buddhist monk who put gasoline all over himself and set it on fire
in the street.
She made a comment about she was considered herself the first lady because she was the sister-in-law of his, and she mentioned something about a barbecue.
Oh my!
It didn't go over well with the Buddhists.
Not at all, I'm sure. And then here's President Thieu in the front lobby of our TV station when he came in, and he was so nice, and he just chatted with everybody. And the reason for him coming to our studio, CBS had asked that they use our studio to film 2 sessions of Face the Nation, CBS Face the Nation, and they asked me to be the announcer on it. And so I got in the booth and I said, "It's time now for CBS Face the Nation with Martin Agronsky. Our special guest this Sunday morning is President Nguyen Van Thieu, President of the Republic of South Vietnam." And so,
do you remember how long was different from this particular time to when he was killed at the coup?
No, President Thieu wasn't killed. It was the one.
Oh, that's right.
Before
DM.
Yeah. And then Nguyen Cao Ky, he was head of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and then President Thieu was an Army general.
That's right.
And then he went to France and lived in France, and President Key, I think, before him, came to California and opened a liquor store. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And they're both passed away now.
Key went back to Vietnam and lived to the end of his life.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went back and lived for a while.
I thought he died when he was in California. And this is Martin Agronsky on the left, and I don't know who that is in between in the middle there, but he was one of the correspondents for the New York Times or something, but they were actually filming a CBS Face the Nation. And to tell you how big these guys were, they made 2 videotapes of it and sent one on an airplane from Vietnam to Alaska to New York and sent the second copy of it from Vietnam to Honolulu to Los Angeles in case one of the planes crashed. They wouldn't lose a CBS Face the Nation. That's how big time those guys are. This is Martin Agronsky, CBS News, with Ambassador Bunker, Ellsworth Bunker, and he was the ambassador to Vietnam when I was there. Here's one of our TV stations. We had a network of 9 TV stations at the time, all over on tops of hills and mountains. Whenever there was a base unit down in the valley, 25th Infantry Division, 9th Infantry Division, 4th Infantry Division, we tried to put a TV radio station up on the hill right above them. And this was our station in Pleiku. And there's some of the, also, whenever we had a TV station on top of the mountain, the guys that had the FLIR, they call it now, I think, the heat-seeking photographs and the TV and whatever, the scanning scopes and all that. And that was all secret then. They could go at night and they could tell you where the Viet Cong were sleeping. They could do a heat outline, heat sensors. And they had them mounted on the helicopters, and they were called Snoopies, I think of it. No, was it? Maybe it was. Snoopies. And here's our TV station. We had 12 of these. They were made on tractor-trailer trucks. And they were made by General Electric, I believe. And it was a complete TV station. and it had projectors, film projectors, and it had a little studio and a desk and a microphone. And they would lift these things or drive them with an 18-wheeler up on top of the mountain or lift it with a giant crane helicopter. And then they started building, if you see in the back, that was added to it, and that was the TV studio. And so they kept building, but they started out day one with just this little trailer. That was a complete TV station.
They didn't. I see they didn't have barrels for around it for shrapnel if you got mortared or whatever.
No, they didn't at that time. But now over here in the Quonset hut on the right, you can see the sandbags and everything. But at that time, they probably hadn't had time. Now, we had a very distinguished visitor who came to Vietnam and visited a lot of the GIs, especially in Saigon. And it was, you recognize this guy?
Yes, Vice President.
Vice President of the United States at the time. Lyndon Johnson was the president and Vice President.
Hubert H. Humphrey.
Hubert H. Humphrey. He was a nice guy. He was a pharmacist from Minnesota and got involved in the United States Senate and then later was Vice President with Lyndon Johnson. And a heck of a nice guy. We carried all of our crew. This is the front yard of Ambassador Bunker's house in downtown Saigon. And here's some more shots. We set up all the network and all the stuff, and these are all Secret Service guys that came with him, and special aides to General Westmoreland and aides to Ambassador Bunker and CIA people and everything else you can imagine. But there he was. We had a news conference with him on the lawn of Ambassador Bunker's house, Hubert Humphrey, and then he came around, shook hands with everybody, and there's our crew. And if we can get the next picture there, yeah, there's the crew. And boy, we were going at it, and we were running to tape recorders and running our cameras. We had to disassemble our cameras and take them down there. And here's General Westmoreland, William Childs Westmoreland, William C. Westmoreland. Went to Citadel, didn't he? He was from South Carolina.
I think he did.
He was a super gentleman. He really was. And that was me. There's Sergeant Ellis filling in for General Westmoreland. Actually, what it was, they asked me to go up there and check the microphone. And it was Ambassador Bunker, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, and General Westmoreland's microphone, and I was almost afraid to go touch it, to tell you the honest truth. Now, Bill, 2 weeks ago when I was here, we talked about the beautiful Vietnamese women in downtown Saigon.
Yes.
And all around, in all the towns and villages. And this was the native dress. You want to describe it?
Well, it's the Ao Dai.
Ao Dai.
And that was almost everybody, all the ladies would dress like that. It's amazing. That is a very dirty country, but they were always so spotlessly clean.
Unbelievable.
It's just like they were always come right out of a bottle or a room. It was amazing. And there was some, you could definitely tell the younger ladies who live well. Most of the young ladies in Vietnam were very attractive, but because of the hard life, they got old real quick.
Yeah.
Except for the ladies in Saigon who she probably worked for with one of the U.S. Bases or one of the U.S. organizations there, which was because that was a nice bike she's on, and most of them didn't have one that nice.
Probably a French motor scooter, and it was made up basically of pajama pants, silk pajama pants, white or black, and then the Ao Dai itself was two flowing panels, one in the front and one in the back, and that was
very snug, very snug fitting.
Yep, and it had a flow. And if you look here in the back, so she wouldn't get it caught in her spokes, she tucked it in her luggage rack in the back there, so it would flow. And it was beautiful to see him run down the street. And a conical straw hat. Everybody had to have one of those hats. Everybody had a straw hat.
I got one at home on my wall.
Have you really? And here's the across from our hotel where I live, the old Quezon Hotel. It was an old French hotel. We turned into a barracks, and across from us was a Chinese movie or Vietnamese movie. I'm not sure, but they had movie theaters. We were always.
There was one at Benoit, and I was always afraid to go in there because I didn't want to sit in the dark. Because I didn't know who the good guys were and the bad guys.
Yeah, amen, brother. And then this was an AK-47. A lot of that going on. We talked about this last time I was here about how it was smuggled in baskets, in rice baskets, in vegetable carts and everything else, strapped and taped and wired under trucks and cars and everything. And they smuggled hundreds of thousands of these things into downtown Saigon.
There were two kinds. There was the Russian AK-47 and the Chinese knockoff.
Chicom.
And you could definitely tell the difference. They say you could take one of those AK-47s, load it, throw it in a ditch, cover it up with dirt, come back a year later, dig it up, and it'll shoot right there.
The Russian version, Kalashnikov.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a great weapon. And I think I read the other day There've been more of these produced around the world than any other weapon.
Well, if you look at even today, you look at ISIS and all these guys, they all carry an AK-47
Yep,
just about.
they are indeed. Now, we talked about the IEDs, what individual explosive devices or whatever they call them. We had the same thing, but we called them booby traps in Vietnam. Improvised explosive IEDs, improvised explosive. We call them booby traps. And here's a good example. These are all homemade hand grenades. Every military base in Vietnam had to have armed guards around their garbage dumps to keep these people from using beer cans and things like that and building these homemade devices. They would strap them to a tree and run a wire across the trail and hook it to the pin and pull the pin on the grenade. You'd trip over it and pull the pin and it would blow you up. And what they wanted to do is hurt you more than kill you. They wanted to blow you up from the knees down because it took 6 or 8 guys to look after one wounded guy.
Yeah. It was much easier because if a guy got killed, they'd send in for a helicopter to take his body out, but the rest of the patrol could keep right on going.
Yep.
But if you wounded a guy, you got to leave a medic, you got to leave security with him,
Yep.
and quite often you couldn't continue on the patrol because you didn't have enough men left.
That's it.
So you had to wait for him to be medevaced out.
Exactly. And speaking of medevacs, those were the angels. If people says, who were your heroes in Vietnam? My heroes in Vietnam were the guys that flew the medevac choppers.
The dust-offs, yeah.
The dust-offs, and that's what they called them. And this was in downtown Saigon now, and this was during the Tet Offensive when they were fighting all around the city and inside the city. And a lot of these came out near Tan Son Nhut Air Base and the racetrack and the cemetery out there around Tan Son Nhut Air Base. And they were wounded. And was that 25th Infantry Division that came in or 9th? I believe it was 25th.
I think it was 25th.
Yeah. And so a lot of them were wounded, and they would bring them in, and we would block the traffic, and they would land these choppers in the middle of the intersection in a street in downtown Saigon, and then we'd run them into the hospital.
Yeah, these guys were special guys. If you can think about sitting in a helicopter, waiting for them to put the wounded in, and bullets are flying into your helicopter, breaking the plexiglass all around you, and you can hear them hitting your helicopter. You have an unarmed helicopter, but you're landing, waiting for them to load those wounded, because your main thing is you're going to get those wounded out no matter what it takes.
Yep, exactly.
Competition. Somebody on Blab, which is another outlet that we're on, is putting his own pictures up there.
Oh, yeah? Vietnam, I can't see them. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Hey, we welcome any vet to come and be with us here and participate. Our next slide is a picture of a fire. And it never got that much coverage, but they would come upside the city limits of Saigon or any town or village in Vietnam. And they had these Russian B-40 rockets, and they would go approximately 7 miles. Had a little booster motor in the back, 22 pounds of TNT in the nose. And they had this launcher, this big tube and a tripod and all that.
The 120 millimeter rockets.
120 millimeter rockets.
They were taller than the Vietnamese guys. The Vietnamese were probably 5'2", a tall one.
Yep.
And the rockets were like they were about 5'6" or so, and they could fire those things.
And also, instead of bringing the launcher, which was too much trouble, they would get 2 pieces of bamboo and lace them together and make an X and shoot these things across. And there's no guidance, whatever. They were just shooting it into Saigon. They didn't care. And here's what happened. This was about 4 square blocks that burned down one night. And the next morning at daylight, we all ran down there and tried to help any way we could and bring these people out. And I want to say a special shout out. I went all around Vietnam as a combat correspondent and whatever. And this one, I had a Blucher. That's Big Macho Joe there, actually, what it is. I wasn't sure if I knew how to fire that thing or not.
M79
grenade launcher. And they call it a Blucher because when you shot it, it said Bluk. But I want to say hello because I never got to see him over there, but he was there, my friend Larry Stogner from Channel 11 WTVD in Durham. And Larry is off the air and retired now and has Lou Gehrig's disease, but he was a trooper in Vietnam, and it always excites me and tickles me so much. We get together and have dinner once in a while. He was at Channel 11 for 32 years, I believe, and when he always says, when we meet new people or whatever, he says, it's really funny. When I was in Vietnam, I watched Dick every night on TV. When we came back to Raleigh, he watches me on TV every night, and that's true.
Well, Larry went back several years ago, and whenever we go back, we have students locally put together manila envelopes with pictures of themselves and mementos from Raleigh area and
Yeah.
so forth. And he carried a bunch of those envelopes and gave them to the kids in Vietnam when he went back. And he did that special on Channel 11 when he went back. It's probably been 5 or 6 years or so long.
Probably more than that. Yeah, I remember. He asked me if I wanted to go and help produce the thing, if I recall, and I said, no, thank you. I don't care to go back under any circumstance. But Larry, of course, Larry's been all over the world. But we want to give a shout out to our friend Larry Stogner, who is, we're proud to say, one of us, a Vietnam veteran, and did a tremendous job over there. Wasn't on television in Vietnam until he got home in Durham, and then he went to work at Channel 11 for many, many years. Hey, Larry, we love you, brother. And then this was one of the groups up there, one of the signal units or whatever on one of the hills. I went all over Vietnam to every province, went into North Vietnam once with a Jolly Green Giant to help rescue a downed Navy pilot who had parachuted out and had a broken leg. And I went and they sent me out. There was a weekend show on the radio, and it was called Carousel. And our chief producer for radio was Lamar Tener, Air Force Sergeant Lamar Tener from Louisiana. And Cal would send me, he found out this stupid young country boy from North Carolina would take a tape recorder and a camera and go anywhere that he sent him on a helicopter. And so I did. And I had a chance to go out with the Cobras and fly with the Cobras on an actual mission out into the jungles, firing rockets and everything. And they gave me this patch called a War Wagon. And I was a machine gunner on a helicopter, a little Loach light observation helicopter one day. Got popped in the leg by an AK-47. Young kid jumped up in a ditch with an AK and popped me in the leg, but I was okay. But I got to go and fly. I went with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I flew with the Air Force FACS out of Da Nang, flew with the Jolly Green Giants, rescued a Navy pilot, actually into the DMZ, went into Cambodia accidentally with the Green Berets one day on a sniper mission, and we went up to Pleiku. These were actually the Montagnard Indians who lived on the mountaintops up there, and they asked us to go into their village and to search it around. These people were the Montagnards of the Hmong, and we have so many of them in North Carolina. You know, a lot of them were
the special forces really love the Montagnards.
Yes.
And there's a large group around Asheboro. The special forces actually bought a bunch of land around Asheboro because of the hills is so much like the Montagnards. We actually, the strange thing, when the Montagnards were really like the American Indians. When we first got there, the women were topless, the men used crossbows and wore loincloths. There's a man who lived in Raleigh who actually went in and recruited the Montagnards to fight for us because the Montagnards were always mistreated by the Vietnamese, even the South Vietnamese.
They called them animals and jungle men and things like that.
You know, and he went in and convinced them to fight with the Americans, and the Vietnamese did not want us to give them weapons.
Asking if anybody knows what this is. It's his dad's pictures.
Oh,
I can't see.
it looks like it's negative almost. That might be the market in downtown Saigon. I don't know.
It's going strong today, just like that.
Yeah, that might be what it is. I'm not. Or it's a USO show, maybe. I can't see for sure what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Montagnards, now Montagnard means mountain man in French, I understand, and they were actually the Hmongs, but we call them Montagnards as the French troops had before us. And they asked us to go into their village, and they'd been chased out a couple of days before by the Viet Cong, asked us to go back in and search their village, which we did.
They were probably some of the best allies we've ever had.
Oh, yeah, buddy, and they were good fighters, too.
There was a group that came here. They were surrounded. They were still fighting up until a few years ago. Today, they're treated worse now than they were back before the war.
Oh, man.
But there's a group, they're very tribal. It is a tribe. There's the Raye and Dagger are the two of the tribes that are here.
Yeah.
And the last group that came over, Paul Campbell, who was actually recruited them to start with, went out to the airport and picked them up and put them in an old hospital in Apex and took good care of them. We wanted to help them out, so we were going to go buy, go get Hostess Twinkies and stuff for the kids. He said, no, it would tear their stomachs up.
Oh, yeah.
So what we did, we had people who were hunting got deer meat. So we were able to keep them furnished with deer. Those people, within 7 to 10 weeks, I forgot exactly which one, got out of that place. After 10 weeks in this country, all of them had jobs. None of them ever taken welfare and did fantastic. In fact, we worked with the Special Forces guys, North Carolina Vietnam veterans, and we helped give scholarship to a young lady who graduated from law school. She was the first Montagnard who ever graduated from law school, who graduated from
wow.
Campbell. And
well, you can see in the picture how neat they were. That was a chicken coop, and then here's some of the baskets in the gardens.
if they notice, they build the houses up off the ground on stilts.
Yeah,
that's so that their animals and stuff can be up under the house.
Yeah, and also they had little fences around everything. But they were afraid some of the Viet Cong might still be in their village because they would go in and kill these people, you know.
Yeah.
And I went into a village one day, not this one, but I went into a Vietnamese village one day, and the Viet Cong had come in there and taken the village chief's daughter and strung her up by her feet. And she was like 7 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and they split her stomach open and let her bleed to death upside down, hanging in the middle of the village. And the idea was to put terror in the hearts of those people and say, next time we come in the village, you give us all of your rice and everything else, you know. And,
well, Dick, we us Southerners, we always have a pig picking.
yes, sir.
So that group of Montagnards, we invited them to a pig picking. But then we'd have found out that we needed 2 different pigs, because when the Montagnards have a pig picking, we always eat everything. Us Southerners eat everything but the squeal, I said.
Right.
Well, the Montagnards eat everything but the squeal and the blood.
Yeah, wow.
So, but they brought in their Montagnard wine. It's in a big jar.
Yes.
And you put leaves in there, and you throw a long straw.
Yes.
Well, a guy by the name of David Crabtree had just come to Raleigh, and we invited him out. And this Montagnard wine, you don't know it's got you until it's too late.
Yes.
It'll reach out and grab you.
Yeah, rice wine.
Oh, it's some potent stuff. But
I had a sip of it in a hut when we were in that village there. And here's an interesting shot. These are the guys with the 9th Infantry Division. And I flew, my helicopter pilot was on the right, and I was a door gunner on a 2-man helicopter. And we went around, and we would scout and find Viet Cong running around or shooting at us or whatever. Our job was to draw fire. Now, that was pretty smart, wasn't it? But we would do that, and then we would call in, you see the helicopter in the background, we'd call in these guys with 6 or 7 troopers in them and tear them up. And we did. And there's now people said, how did you get pictures of Ho Chi Minh and red scarves and Russian flags? Why did Russian flags come up in Vietnam? Well, what was happening is the Chinese communists and the Russians, as you said earlier about the AK-47 rifles, were supplying these people. And back in Russia, when they would, in the factories, when they would pack cases of ammunition and hand grenades and bullets and things like that, they would put a Russian flag in there too. Mm-hmm. And it was to say, we communists in Russia are saluting our brothers who are fighting the Americans in Vietnam. And that's where the Russian flags came from. And I have a Viet Cong flag.
One of our POWs, while he was a POW, his helmet was in a museum in Russia.
Yeah, wow.
His name was Schutte.
Yeah,
Bill Schutte, who's been on the show.
Yeah.
Well, a helmet was on display in one of the museums there in Moscow. And
people didn't realize how much assistance they got from the Russians.
Yeah. Well, you know, the part of the problem after the fall of Saigon was China made the North Vietnamese pay them back for the amount of money they spent.
Oh, yeah?
So Vietnamese almost starved to death because all the rice they grew went to the Chinese to pay back some of the money they spent.
Wow.
So there was a lot of hard times originally after Saigon fell and they took over because of the Chinese. Yep. Today they hate the Chinese. In South China Sea, you don't say South China Sea because it makes them mad. Even though that's what it is, they want to call it something else.
Oh, exactly. You want to build the islands out there. This is a hospital in Long Binh. Right out where you were
1930 back.
Yep, that was it right there. And we went out and put on a show. I was master of ceremonies. The guy up on the stage, if you can see him, is named Pete Lemongello. He was from New Jersey. He looked and sounded exactly like Frank Sinatra. He looked like Frank Sinatra's son. It was just spooky. And he got up and he was a professional singer, Pete Lemongello. And he could sing. And he's now retired down in Florida. He has sold more records than anybody you can name. On ads, on television ads. You know, here's the latest hits. Be sure to buy this record. By buying late night ads himself on television all over the United States. Mm-hmm. He sold millions and millions of records. He's now retired down in Florida. Pete Lemongello. And I swear to you, when he put on his Army uniform, right across the pocket, it said Lemongello. And we gave him a hard time. But he was a great singer, sounded just like Sinatra. And we were putting on a show for some of the wounded guys right there in Long Binh, out in your place. Now, here's a picture you might recall. Look at the guy squatting down on the left. Does anybody recognize this young man? He replaced me. I left in September of 1968, and this young man came in and replaced
He's
me.
Vanna White's assistant, isn't he?
Vanna White's best buddy and assistant on the famous television show Wheel of Fortune. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Pat Sajak, and he was a pay clerk. And one of our guys went out to get his re-enlistment bonus, and he wanted it in a suitcase in cash. And so this guy was waiting on him, and he said, when I was in college, I worked at a radio station in the college. And he said, I'd like to come and audition. And Lamar Tener said, come on down and audition. And he did, and it was Mr. Pat Sajak. And he's in California now, and he acknowledges on the air occasionally that he is very proud to be a Vietnam veteran.
Yes, he does.
And we're having our reunion, by the way, the last 2 days in September and the first 3 days in October of this year here in Raleigh. And I'm the chairman of our American Forces Vietnam Network reunion. And we're hoping Adrian Cronauer could come and be with us. And we're hoping Pat Sajak may come from California. Who knows? We'll just invite him and see. And then here's our last picture. Speaking of reunions, this is a reunion. Now, if you can remember well enough, when you listen to the radio in Vietnam, all over Vietnam, the American Forces Network, you will remember listening to a guy named Preston Clough. Preston was from Conway, New Hampshire, and he was the smartest sportsman I have ever known in my life. He memorized more statistics than Joe Garagiola. He was like Garagiola, and he was the greatest sportsman in the world, and he was our sports guy on the American Forces Network. Preston
Is
Clough.
that the guy in the dark on
in
the
the
far
dark
right?
shirt on the right, on the dark T-shirt on the very far right, and he was my roommate in Vietnam. And then he went to Alaska and was retired from the Army in Anchorage, Alaska, and became the sports director for the base up there, Fort Elmendorf Air Force Base in the whatever. I forgot what the Army fort is up there. But this is our reunion. And these guys were on the air. They were announcers. I got to put on my glasses to see everybody in this picture here.
Who's the young lady next to the left of Chris Noel?
There's Chris Noel. She's the one with the
blonde,
white scarf, the blonde. That's her hair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Chris Noel there on the left.
Who are the other two ladies?
You remember her? The other two ladies were actually donut dollies in Vietnam, and they came and they asked if they could come and join our organization. We told them certainly, please do. Be delighted to have you. But some of the guys did Good Morning Vietnam are in that crowd up there, and I'm in the very back peeping over.
And if you look at your picture, there's a little arrow pointing at Dick.
Look. And these were the engineers and the on-the-air guys, and oh my gosh, just a little bit of everybody. Joe Siokin, who was a Navy public affairs guy, and he went to the embassy and filmed that when they attacked it. He was in Lebanon when they blew the barracks up in Lebanon and filmed that. Joe Siokin retired in Navy San Diego. He was also the coach of the Navy judo team. Fantastic gentleman.
Now, how many of them went on into, after they got out of the military, went on into professional announcing and
engineers and electronics guys and cameramen and everything. A lot of them did, and I don't know what the exact number is, but I'm looking here and see guys that were in public affairs, stayed in the military, announcers on the air. That Don Fox, you see the guy sitting on the right there next to Siokin, and the guy in the uniform, blue shirt is Joe Siokin, and the next guy is Don Fox with the beard, and he's got on the brown tan or brown shirt with stripes in it. He was the guy on the radio when I got there doing Good Morning Vietnam. He was like the third fellow to do it. He replaced Adrian Cronauer, I believe, on the air, and it was Don Fox, and he was at our reunion out in San Diego. And like I say, coming up end of September, 1st of October this year, we're going to host everybody here in Raleigh at the American Forces Vietnam Network semi-annual reunion. We're going to have a ball. We're going to give them a North Carolina pig picking, boy.
Yeah, they need to know how things do in North Carolina, especially that's Eastern North Carolina barbecue
yes,
too, by the way.
Bill, thank you for letting me show my slides to everybody here. And I was a combat correspondent, an announcer, reporter, voiceover. I did a little bit weatherman, did a little bit of everything, producer. And I had the chance to go out, and whenever I went around, I carried a camera, and I took over 2,000 color slides in Vietnam. And I've edited them down just to, some general stuff. Thank you for letting me show it. It's good to see them again. It brings back some wonderful old memories and some sad memories too.
Yeah, I just had 400 and some put on disc.
I need
and
to
I
do
was
that.
I was going through it, and some pictures I didn't even remember being in it.
Yeah.
It was it brought up some really feelings of oh yeah, I remember that time and
Yeah,
so forth.
right.
Dick, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll hope to have you back sometime. Some of those other pictures you've got.
9 more minutes.
Okay, I hadn't quit yet. Just carry on.
We'll talk another
my-
90
my-
minutes, unfortunately.
Yeah, my producer, radio engineer, and everything. Amnon was cracks the whip, and
Yes, he does.
we still got a little bit more time, but I just wanted to tell you how much we appreciated you coming on and telling your story. I got lots of rave reviews of your been on before.
Thank you.
That guy is taking a shower. Looks like
Yeah.
that other
He's
picture
pouring
there.
a bucket of water on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We
the
had to do that.
sometimes you don't think about it, but a guy goes out, he's in the infantry, he goes out, and his buddy might get shot right next to him, and part of him blows on his uniform, and that buddy's with him for a couple of weeks sometimes because he don't have a chance to change uniform or take a shower.
Yeah.
And you can imagine humping through the jungle for 2 weeks at a time, wearing the same clothes. That's why you didn't wear underwear generally when you went out like
That's
that.
it. And that's hard to explain to somebody. You didn't wear underwear? No, because it stayed soaking wet from sweat all the time.
You would have
And
rashes.
It would give you the worst case of diaper rash I've had since I was 2 years old.
Yeah.
Man.
It's those little things that people don't ever
This
think
is the
about.
picture that he was.
Let me put on my
okay.
glasses here and see. We're looking at another TV.
That looks like a Vietnamese show
Uh-huh.
because it's
Yeah, it is a Vietnamese show.
Vietnamese-
Yeah, stage. Happy New Year. That's what it was.
probably Tet.
It could have been
It's
Tet.
probably Tet
And
then.
it was probably at the Officers Club at Tan Son Nhut or somewhere like that. It looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Hmong.
For those of you who don't understand what we're talking about when we're talking about Tet, Tet for the Vietnamese is Christmas, New Year's, Easter, homecoming,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, the whole place shuts down for a couple weeks at a time because they all go back
Yeah.
home and visit. No matter where they've gone to before, they all come back home.
Let that guy come in.
Yeah, come in and talk to us and tell us about your pictures,
Said
if you
Merry
would.
Christmas and Happy New Year there.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay. My hero, Charlie.
Can he talk to us?
It's my dad's pictures.
Oh,
There's your dad's. Oh, it's
Yeah.
a her. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
What year was your dad in Vietnam?
What?
What year was he in Vietnam?
He did 2 tours in so he was in 60. I have pictures, but he never spoke about any of it.
Well, I can understand that. A lot of us came back, and it just wasn't something you want to talk about. But now, people who never saw Vietnam want to become Vietnam veterans. Is he still around? Is he still with you?
He passed away in 2005. They said it was a direct result of the war.
wow.
Probably Agent Orange or something.
Probably.
Was
He
he
had
Air Force?
COPD, but they think that it was an Agent Orange. Do you recognize this face? It looked very familiar to the other guy that she showed.
No, I don't. It looks like an army guy there. I don't know.
Are you
Where-
talking about your picture, the one that shows up when you're on?
Yes.
No,
This guy
I
here?
don't. There was at the base I was at. It was 50,000 men at the base I was at. Pretty good size. So there was a lot of men. 500,000 at one time.
550,000 in 1968 when I left.
But
Gosh, wow.
uh,
But we were all young and good looking anyway, weren't we?
well, we were
I
young.
can only
Yeah.
do one at a time.
Pardon
so
me?
bear with me.
Say it again.
I said I'm going to switch the picture up. I can only do one at a time.
Okay.
Though.
Okay. Oh, look. Looks like a bunker. What is that?
That was,
Oh, there's a Jeep turned upside down
Yeah.
off a bridge. It looks a stone bridge. Somebody ran a Jeep off the road. Could have been blown. Hit a landmine. You know, we were talking about Butch Benton, our buddy here from
Yeah,
Wilson,
from Wilson.
we grew up with.
Yeah.
Was on the way down he was on top of a hill, a mountain, was on the way down the mountain to go to Hawaii to meet his wife, and his Jeep got blown up, and that's what it looked like. I'm
trying
sure.
to see if I can recognize the area, but I don't recognize that.
It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
He either ran off in the ditch or he was blown off by a hidden landmine. There were plenty of them over there, I'll tell you that. So, wow.
Here comes another one. Hold on.
Interesting. We have.
It just
we,
takes.
we only. I mean, Honey, remember, we are just simulcasting it on Blab. Really, it's from 8 till 9 as a regular show. So
What I'd like to do is have you come back on sometime and show you pictures.
That'd be great. Is that a
would
submarine?
you like to do that?
What?
Would
That's
you,
a submarine.
would you like, I mean, is it okay with you to be a guest on the show and actually show those pictures to the audience?
The live pictures or on like a slide? And how would I do
The
that?
slides that you've got showing us now.
Okay.
So-
And how would I do that?
Well, Amnon can work that out for you, but we're running out of time
Right,
on
yeah.
ours. But we
Write down that email address.
computers
are you
2K
writing?
voice. Oh no.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, am I writing?
Yeah, I want you to write that email address and send me an email, and I'll tell you how we can do that with you. Okay? Host
Okay.
HOST host at.
Okay.
Are you writing?
Um,
All right, you guys keep going.
I'm gonna type instead. It'll be quicker.
Okay, here.
It's
I'll type it
host.
here. Keep you.
All right.
guys
Well, Dick, like I said, appreciate you coming in. Let know that a couple of things that are coming up. April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd with the North Carolina History Museum, North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated are going to be doing the Vietnam experience. We will have military vehicles there. We will have helicopters there. We're doing the play. Ron Harris from Wake Forest wrote a play. We had it last year, 3 performances, had standing room only. The last couple of nights, rave reviews. We've been asked to go back, so we'll be doing that again.
What's the name of the play?
Etchings in Stone.
All right, I'll volunteer to help any way
All
I
right.
can.
Oh, and the concept is as a visitor or as an audience, you're sitting inside the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and you see visitors to the wall. A widow of someone whose name's on the wall, or a son or daughter whose father's on the wall, or another veteran who maybe been an officer and he sent out these men to go on an ambush and got ambushed and got killed themselves, and how much he has still lived with that.
Wow.
It's a quite educational and moving performance. We'll have a 1/8 replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall there. We'll have weapons. We'll have uniforms, memorabilia.
Right.
But put that on your calendar for April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at North Carolina History Museum in Raleigh, North Carolina on Eaton Street.
I was there when President Reagan dedicated the wall.
At the wall.
Yeah.
And that's, the wall has almost as much controversy as the war.
Yeah,
And,
it really was.
But that's coming up. And of course, TET. Now, North Carolina Vietnam veterans for 28 years now, since 1987, has met at 12 o'clock noon on the first Saturday of the month at the North Carolina Vietnam Memorial on State Capitol grounds. And we call out the names of those from North Carolina who are still unaccounted for.
My next door neighbor was one of them.
1,600 men and women, or men mostly, lost their lives from North Carolina.
Yeah.
At present time, there's 39 from North Carolina who are still unaccounted for. We'll invite you to come down any first Saturday at 12 o'clock noon and join with us in calling out the names. The next one will be this Saturday after this coming Saturday, and we will have the North Carolina Vietnam Helicopters Association actually doing our guest reading of the names. They have their reunion, your yearly reunion here in Raleigh at that time. So come down and look at some helicopter pilots and those crazy guys who sit there while people are shooting at them.
Angels.
And join us in calling out the names and remembering those who missed a whole lot more than Christmas and whose families don't know one way or the other whether they're alive or dead, who have no closure yet. I just saw on Facebook a couple of days ago a young lady that's very special, Robin Owens, whose father bounced her on his knee, said, "I'll be back," and never came home.
Wow.
And she just become a grandmother, and she's always had that little hope that was a chance he could come back. But I don't know that now that after all these years that she's kind of
Right.
given up on that hope a little bit. But I know years ago when I would talk to her, she always had that little hope because he always said, "Honey, I'll be back," and he left her. And and all they know is he was shot down. They think they have seen him in some pictures over the period of time, but Neighbor came home. So, Robin, we still think about you, and congratulations on being a grandmother. And that's the time for the show. And young lady, who called in, we'd love to have you come on the show and talk about your dad and show us his pictures and so forth. That's what this show is all about. All of you have a good remainder of the week. We're getting close. I guess this is a hump day, and we're getting close to the end. Getting close to the end of January. It's hard to believe that January is already gone. If you're not from around this area, we've had snow and ice, and we don't have snow and ice in North Carolina. Not supposedly anyway. But we're hope you wherever you are, you got power, and you've got. I'm looking at some of these pictures of the guys up north. I really appreciate being down here in the South when they got 3 feet of snow in Washington. And,
unbelievable.
I know here a lot of people without power. So thank you for tuning in, and looking forward to talking with you. And Dick's got something he wants to say.
I want to say God bless all of our men and women in uniform around the world, and God bless this great country. God bless America.
Amen. Amen
Thank
to that.
you.
And remember, it's coming on almost time to vote.
Yeah.
So pay attention to what's going on. Don't just go vote. I mean, so many of us can tell you what Rihanna wore yesterday, but they don't know who's running for president. So get out there and do your own research. Don't listen to the media. Go out and do your own research and vote your own conscience. But you got to register first. Thank you. Good night.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.